Action. That's kind of all you need. It's so evenly divided. Hi, everyone. I'm Stephen W. Long. This is The Writing Life. And if you've watched any of our 50 or so shows, you know that I always start by saying how pleased I am to have our guest. And it's always true. But today is special. My guest today is Susan Watkins, a good friend, fabulous writer. We're both in the same critique group, Easy Writers, and here to talk about really Susan's idea, which is the anthology Prism. So first, Susan, hello, welcome.
Hi, thank you.
And you know, I want to start a little bit off to the side, and well, let me just say, you're a former attorney. And
yes, a retired attorney.
And I don't know, what's the difference between former and retired, or is there a difference?
I think, in my mind, a former attorney could be someone who'd been disbarred.
Ah.
And I want to make sure you know I haven't been disbarred.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So the nature of being an attorney is, I would think, completely factual. I mean, that's what you're looking for. No?
Go ahead. Finish
Okay.
Your question.
And but the area that you choose to write in is, and help me out here, I think it's science fiction. Is that the category?
Yeah, speculative fiction. Yeah.
Speculative fiction, which is not verifiable. It's not, I would say, real. What drew you to that? In other words, is your attraction to speculative fiction in any way a reaction to your career?
That's an interesting way to phrase it. I started to jump in because I think the most successful attorneys are the ones who tell a story very well.
Okay.
And
yes, shape that story.
Yes, they're using facts, we hope, and not making up what happened.
Mm-hmm.
But if they can present the case or the argument in a way that resonates with our minds, which I think are wired for story,
sure,
then they'll be more successful. They'll be able to get their point across more easily. And I'm not sure I went from that to science fiction.
Okay.
I've been interested in speculative fiction since high school, when I read what at the time seemed like a very groundbreaking story called Passengers by Robert Silverberg, which is about aliens who invade the Earth, and I don't know if they even look like anything, but they take over people's minds and operate the person's body and mind. And the most horrible thing that they made people do at that time was have sex with somebody of the same sex.
Oh.
So when I was in high school, which I know you won't believe this, but was a long time ago, that was practically
10 years?
Unheard. Yeah, 10 years ago.
Okay.
That was very far out of the mainstream. And,
sure.
And a very shocking ending to that story. But it was also quite a commentary on our lives, our actual lived lives. So you say, to you, science fiction doesn't seem real, but to me, it seems like a way of standing outside our reality and commenting on it maybe in a safe space. And so he could write this story, and I have no idea what Robert Silverberg's feelings were about same-sex couples,
right,
you know, back at that time. He might have been just trying to tell us that this was a possibility in our lives, and we needed to be able to figure it out. And what did that mean for those of us who are heterosexual? And I soon became fascinated by the stories of Ursula Le Guin, who of course is a Portland author. And she did the same thing. I began to realize that science fiction was the way to tell philosophy stories in our modern age. And so if you wanted to talk about how the world might be different, it was easier and more palatable and acceptable maybe to tell it in a way that seems bizarre when you think about factual things. So in The Left Hand of Darkness, for example, the aliens, the non-human people who live on this planet, change sex depending on what the sexes are of the people around them. So the human man, who is the investigator of this new world that we've discovered, is always having people that he might meet be male when he first meets them, and then they become female because he never changes his gender. And so it's quite a commentary on how people behave and relate to each other and whatnot, based on a concept that could not possibly be real.
Well,
unless you're frogs.
I was going to say that actually happens in nature, doesn't it?
Yeah, frogs and turtles, I think.
Okay.
Depending on the temperature, will be a certain gender when they hatch out of their eggs. But
I was thinking that there was some animal that could change post-birth.
And there
You know,
may be,
depending on the circumstances. In other words, if there was a dearth of females, a male might become female.
Yeah, I think I've heard about that.
Yeah. Well, what a great answer. I love that. I as long as I've known you, I didn't think about that. So the follow-up to that is, do you recall the first story you have ever wrote? And I suspect that would be high school as well.
Oh no, before that, I'm sure. That's a good question. My sister is also an author.
Yes.
She's self-published,
Yes.
many books.
Yes.
She and I used to watch all the Warner Brothers Westerns when we were kids.
Sure.
And in our basement room, there were two big bar stools because my parents had put a sort of a bar counter against the wall, and they had their parties down there. And that's where my sister and I watched TV. And we would ride those bar stools as if they were horses. And so we were writing TV scripts all the time.
Okay.
For these shows with our horses.
And that would be Sugarfoot?
Sugarfoot was one for sure.
Yeah.
Tales of Wells Fargo, which I don't think was Warner Brothers, but that was another one.
Yeah.
I still remember to this day waiting to find out what the horse's name was, and the hero finally had to call his horse, and he said, "Come here, boy."
Oh, come on.
That's the horse's name.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we've been writing all our lives.
Yeah, that's interesting. I think all of art is expressive. You know, it's a way to express. And it sounds like you both needed, in a sense, to get that out. Or at least there was a feeling that there's something to contribute.
And it was fun.
Sure.
Yeah, it was a fun way to express our, if we thought the plot wasn't any good, we could make it better. We could write it ourselves. I might be able to more specifically answer your question about a story. When I was a junior in high school, of course, I started looking at colleges.
Yeah.
And I was interested in creative writing, and one of the schools I talked to said, "Well, have you published anything in your high school creative writing magazine?"
Mm.
And I said, "Oh, well, we don't have one."
Mm.
And she said, "Well, why haven't you started one?" So my senior year in high school, I got together with some friends and we started a creative writing
Oh, how
magazine.
wonderful.
And the story that I recall publishing in that was very definitely science fiction. It was about a world where people had discovered that what happened in the afterlife was dependent on a machine that was called the being. And this machine, you told the machine what you wanted in the afterlife, and the machine would arrange it. So people had clubs. We're gonna be on an island in the tropics, all of us together. After when we die, and the bad guy decides that when he dies, he's going to rule the machine.
Oh.
And and so comes into conflict with the hero, who has to choose between finding a course that will thwart the bad guy's dreams,
Sure.
or stay with his wife in the afterlife. And so that was my first story.
Well, and you know what that leads me to is your completed novel, which I want to get to in just a second here. But I want to say, when I was in college, and I went to Cal Poly Pomona, one of the requirements then was a senior project. And I was an English major, and I chose as my senior project an original work of fiction. And my advisor really didn't like that. And nevertheless, I went ahead. I didn't want to research Emily Dickinson or something. So I did that, and my story was not so dissimilar.
Really?
Well, in the sense that this was sort of post-apocalyptic. It was humanity had buried itself in trash. We had created so much trash that
Real life.
exactly, and so the ruling class, the people who emerged as leaders, banned technology, and because they felt that technology was what got us into that situation, and so life reverted to being very primitive. My hero was digging through the mounds of trash one day and found a toolbox, and didn't understand tools, but knew that they had power, knew that this was the banned technology because it increases your power. And I thought it was a neat concept. It was poorly written. I didn't do a good job, but I thought the idea was not too bad. So a couple of things. Guys, let's get a shot of Prism. I don't know if they've got that graphic. Yeah, maybe just hold that up to the...
So which way?
There you go. That's perfect. So folks, Prism is really a result of Susan's idea. And I don't want to put words in your mouth, but you came up with this, I believe, because it was a part of a platform for the promotion of your novel. Is that pretty accurate?
You know, I'd totally forgotten about that part of it. I've been thinking...
Thank goodness I'm here.
Yes. We all need a memory agent.
My wife would disagree that I'm the one, but in any event.
It was COVID, and we were having trouble meeting as a group. We could meet outside during the warmer months, but when it got to be colder and darker,
right.
We couldn't meet anymore. And so we struggled to meet on Zoom, which some of us could master and some of us could not. And so we thought, well, let's do a project. And yeah, we had 3 of us who were working on books at the time. Myself, yourself, and Dave King. And we thought we'd have a little platform to maybe promote those works in some way. And we decided not to jury our work.
You're right.
And not to have a theme. And I think that worked out really, really well. I was looking through our table of contents. There are 6 of us, I think, who are represented in here, and then a 7th member, Carrie Martin, who put this book together.
Oh,
It's
she's
absolutely
fabulous.
Amazing.
Yeah.
And you know, we have everything from A Piece by You, which is about an encounter between a white cowboy and a native family in the early 20th century, at a time when urbanization is threatening both of those ways of life.
Right.
We have a story about a fly that's looking for a few hours of bliss before the end of its 28-day life cycle. We have a really neat story, I think, about a grown woman who's trying to find a man to adopt her so that she can finally have a father.
Yeah.
These stories and poems just come at you from all different
Really, yeah.
angles, which is the Prism
Yeah.
reflection. Again, it goes back to when I was talking about successful lawyers. If you start with the concept of story, you know, just so many different things come out of it. So it was a lot of fun. It was a lot of work.
A lot of work.
Took
a long time.
A lot of time.
Yeah.
To put together, but it's here. Can I say it's available at Third Street Books?
I think so.
Or from Easy Writers,
Yeah.
our writing group.
I was going to say there's some poetry, mostly mine, but one of the poems in there is by Dave King, and it's about his dog aging. And I can hardly read that now without getting teary.
Teared up, yeah.
It's pretty
Yeah.
emotional.
Yeah, Mary Rash has several short poems in here.
Sure.
We've got a lot of good stuff.
Yeah. So I was hoping that you would maybe read a sample.
Okay. So I did take a look to see if there was a sample that I could read, and this is from a story called Poof, which is about a young married woman who is having a breakdown. And interestingly enough, as authors, I'm sure this happens to you all the time, Steve, too, we're always asked, where do you get your ideas?
Right.
And this one actually came from something. This
Sure.
is not just an out of the blue kind of thing. In college, I had a roommate who was schizophrenic. And this was before the days when we all understood, which I think we do now, that young people can be in the midst of schizophrenia pretty suddenly and pretty devastatingly.
Mm-hmm.
And it was hard for her and hard for the rest of us. So this is from Poof. Janine stepped out of the shower, toweled off. She tried not to watch the mirror. If she shut the bathroom door tightly, the mirror steamed completely, the whole half wall of it. She smiled, outwitting the steaming mirror. She tucked the towel around her, enjoying the way her body moved beneath the towel, enjoying her skill at towel tucking. She moved into the dressing room, short hair already drying just from being toweled off. Here, in vast rows, Carl's clothes. Suits, slacks, rods of shirts. A pun, yes? A rod was a measure of distance, right? Linear distance? And rods held shirts. White shirts, blue shirts, window pane shirts, striped shirts, even a plaid shirt, LL Bean, worn at the elbows. She would buy a new one for Carl's birthday. When was that? Not soon. She had plenty of time to order one. There was a catalog. Beans was online. The towel slipped. She yanked at it, caught one end. Terry cloth slid from her hip, threatened to leave her naked there in the unwindowed dressing room. A fist came up, her wild hand, a knuckle between her teeth. Don't cry, don't cry. The hand worked down the towel's edge, found the loose flap, retucked it. She stood tall and fluffed her drying hair, breathed, still facing Carl's rods of clothes. The weight of the second closet behind her stooped her. She didn't want to think about it. Didn't want to feel the fabric, soft, rough, slippery. Didn't want to see the dresses, skirts, the blouses, slacks, shorts, jackets, the t-shirts, nighties, rows and rows, blue, yellow, red, green taupe. Is that taupe? Another yellow, a different yellow, orange, other reds, patterns, calico it's called, prints they're called, little flowers, little umbrellas, little tiny people riding little tiny bicycles. No brown dresses, no plain shirts, nothing to blend into the walls. She tried to breathe.
I hope folks watching, by and large, care about literature like you and I do, and what it can evoke. And as you read that, and I'd forgotten about the naming of the various colors and patterns, and I can just feel the swirling concepts in her head, and what that would do to you, the panic, or it's like something rushing at you that you can't really absorb. Anyway, well done. I love that story.
Thank you.
Now, to go back to really the motivation for this was your completed novel. And I know that's been, and again, speculative fiction, is that the category? Can you summarize that for folks?
The novel?
Well,
Yeah, is that what you mean?
yeah, the elevator speech,
The elevator speech.
because I've read your submission for an agent, and I thought there was a capsulization there that was really succinct.
Yeah, too bad you didn't ask me to memorize it
Oh.
before I came in here. You know, the best way I find to give that elevator speech is by using a device that everybody tells you don't use.
Oh, okay.
And that is sort of the rhetorical question. And the nut of that book is, what if a superhero and his alter ego were two different people? And I can't really say that in a query because immediately you think Avengers and
Right.
Marvel Comics and DC, you know, you think all those superheroes, and this is completely different from that.
Right.
This is a battle on a different planet between two immortal beings, and they use human beings as their avatars to fight this war. And the one that we think of in the story as the good being would just leave the world alone and just observe it. And her avatar has come to be known to the other human beings as the hero War-Eeld. And
can I just, so the human thinks that because War-Eeld has appeared in the past.
I was just going to
Yeah,
say,
okay.
he's come, she has a way of taking him sort of in and out of time. She can put him on a shelf till she needs him.
Okay.
So, so he's here and then he's not here. And so it's been 1,500 years that he's been appearing in legends.
Mm-hmm.
So nobody believes he's real because he can't be. But in order for her to bring him to life, she needs another ordinary human to change places with him and go on the shelf while he's walking around the world. And that's the co-hero of this book,
Right.
Rune. And Rune agrees to this arrangement without really understanding it. And the way that he communicates with War-Eeld is just through their memories. They share memory. So if they have to communicate something to each other, they commit it to memory, and then they switch places. And so the story goes on. Do they trust each other enough to make this an effective team, fighting the bad immortal being who would actually destroy the world? Because that's so much fun to do. Yeah. So that's the story.
Yeah. There is, you said they have to trust each other enough, but I know that there are complications which they would tend not to.
Exactly.
Can you give us a hint on that?
Well, the other factor affecting this world is that in the past 100 years or so, mind speaking has become a prominent way of communicating. And people are born with this talent or not. They're either talkers who can actually reach out and contact other people. Has to be somebody you've met. You have to have physically met the person.
Oh, okay.
Or you could be a listener only, which means you can receive a message from somebody you've met, but you can't call them back. You have to find another talker to do it. And then theoretically, there are mind links who can fully connect with another person that they've met. And a mind link appears who just happens to be a lovely young woman.
Right.
And Rune falls in love with her. And the forces of good recruit her to help in this fight against the bad guy. And the problem is that the forces of good don't really want her to exploit her powers to the fullest, but the bad guy will teach her how to do that. So she becomes co-opted by him, and then we have a major conflict with her relationship with Rune. And
I don't want to run out of time before we at least mention you're working on a new novel.
I am.
Yeah, and which I'm enjoying very much, by the way. have you plotted that out?
I have not. It's interesting. The other novels
Because-
I worked on, I do
Right.
plot out. And,
Right.
this one I started through Nanowrimo, which is
Yes.
National Novel Writing Month, where you're just supposed to sit down and just write whatever comes in your head if for this novel. And if there's, I don't know how to get from A to B, you just leave that blank and go to B. So I started with that, and it was so much fun. I just kept doing it. So,
Yeah.
this is a novel that's not really set in the real world. It uses magic. I mean, not that the other novel is set in the real world, but you know, there's magic and there's, I don't know what there is yet because I haven't plotted it out, right?
The feeling that I get is there's an element of the medieval, technologically maybe, that's kind of where we're at, and maybe I haven't read enough to make that determination, but.
No, I think so. I think a lot of books about societies where magic is prevalent focus on either Gothic times or medieval times, or maybe this alternate history of punk.
Oh, sure.
Punk history.
Steampunk. Yeah.
Where full-out steampunk is technological, but there are also magic worlds that are set in that, and
Okay.
you know, so speculative fiction can go in so many different directions. It's really a lot of fun.
My primary writing teacher talked about the energy that you feel when you're writing, and I think that I think I sense that in what you bring us, and it seems we haven't gotten a lot of this, but it seems coherent and going somewhere. I don't get the sense that you're drifting. I get the sense that you know, in general at least, where you want to go with this.
Sure. I'll go with that.
Okay. It sounds great.
I don't know how much time we have left, but
Couple of minutes.
this has been fun. I might mention I had another novel I was working on that was supposed to take place in 2028 and be a time travel novel back in the past.
Okay.
And then COVID hit, and it's totally messed up my timeline. So that novel has been put aside.
Okay.
While I work on this one about a young man coming into the powers he has as a mage.
Yeah. You know, the excerpt that I have in Prism is from where the novel I'm working on, which originally was meant to be two parallel stories in different times, and at some point there would be a connection. But the energy that I talked about, it was just the early 20th century was just more fun.
I know. I think as part of your critiquers,
Yeah.
yes, we can all feel that. We're very excited to get new chapters from this and find out what's going to happen next.
The other one, which had been set in the 80s, was just, it was work to create. And maybe you do this as well, but when I'm writing well anyway, it's very much like a daydream. It's very much like I can close my eyes and see this unfold. And the other, I had to work at it.
Yeah.
So, and
Well,
maybe you do as well.
one of the reasons I chose the kind of setting I did for the War Eel story is that I figured I wouldn't have to do any research. I wouldn't have
Hard to prove you wrong.
And I wouldn't have to ground it in the 80s or the 20s or, you know, something like that.
You have a marvelous imagination, though. The stuff that you come up with, and I commented, in fact, I should have brought your critique, but the names that you come up with, the technology, they seem cohesive. They don't. I think when you create a world, it has to be consistent within that world, and you always are.
That's the lawyer coming out.
Okay. So that we buy the story.
Pardon?
So that we'll buy that story.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, good.
Yeah.
Well, Susan, this is, as usual, gone way too fast. Thank you so much. I'll see you Tuesday. I guess we'll get back together.
I hope so, yeah.
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 And,
Thank you. Yeah, this was fun.
Yeah, I just, folks, if you think that you're interested, in fact, you know what? Prism is available at the library as well.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, so if you don't want to spend the dough,
Show it again.
yeah, go to the library and just go through the volume. I'm so proud of the work, and as Susan said, we didn't curate, if that's the word, but I think individually everybody wanted to put forth their best work, and it turned out great. So
I think so.
okay.
Yeah.
Okay, that's it, guys. Thank you. You can go to stephenwlong.com, contact me, look at what I'm up to. There are also links to a variety of, because this show will eventually be on YouTube. You can take a look at that, and we'll just see you next time on The Writing Life. Take care. Thanks. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.